Hey, it's Kip Simpson. I'm joined by Holly of Zoon Politikon. Hey, Holly.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for joining. I'm going to ask her about a couple things going on with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I do have a link to one petition that's going on. I know it's not always sure how effective all these petitions are exactly, but it is interesting. I thought I would share it. It's in the video description. And as I'm going through this info, I'm going to look at some of your comments. But I do have a link to a petition on change.org. It's among the first in the sources here. And they are essentially calling for an investigation against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So Debbie Wasserman Schultz, obviously one of the key people rigging the 2016 primaries for Hillary Clinton. There's been a ton of questions about her own elections. Most recently, I was actually live on this channel during the midterms when the results were coming in, and that was one of the most shocking results, for me at least, the apparent results that we were supposed to believe when Debbie Wasserman Schultz re-won her seat in the midterms. Now it's being called under question. They want to investigate the November 2018 election in Florida's 23rd congressional district. I am going to ask Holly about this as well, but they run through a lot. There's so many points already just based off of the information that we already know, and a lot of this is still covered up at this point. But there are so many reasons to cast doubt on these election results. Canova runs through them specifically. We'll go into more detail. He does say the Constitution says Congress is the final judge of the elections of its members. This petition demands the House investigate Debbie Wasserman Schultz's most recent rigged election. So that is the change.org petition. You can find it on there. I have a link in this description. These are some of the things I'm going to ask Holly about. I'm going to throw it to her right now, but she sent me this headline. Outrageous, absolutely outrageous headline. This is her reaction. This was Debbie Wasserman Schultz's reaction, who rigged the 2016 elections for Hillary Clinton. She rigged her own election. All evidence seems to suggest in the midterms, working with Brenda Snipes. Meanwhile, Debbie Wasserman Schultz says that she certainly was a victim. That was her response to the Roger Stone investigation just in the last couple of weeks, talking about that, and the WikiLeaks leaks those documents. She's also, they're just announcing recent articles. She's going to be leading a military spending committee. This is after she's taken about $160,000 recently in defense donations. There's some very disturbing details that go into there as well. At the same time, she's set to lead this military spending committee. Debbie Wasserman Schultz taking bribes from defense contractors. And as far as the U.S.'s own borders, she's saying that she's going to do everything that she can, everything at her disposal to stop the border wall, and the plan to use military funds to secure the U.S. border. So, Holly, why don't you expand on that point first? And before we went live, I mean, there's so many Congress people that this can apply to, but seems kind of a trend where Wasserman Schultz is going to be leading this military spending committee. Besides the obvious conflicts of interest, she's one of the most pro-Israel candidates, of course. She's always ready to give money for their defense funding, but absolutely no way, no funding to secure the United States border. I mean, that seems like a problem to me. You had a couple other thoughts about that just before we started here.
Yeah, so we see here in the United States, we see this big divide between Republicans, really, for the most part, supporting the idea of the border wall. We had the government shutdown recently, supposedly tied to the border wall debate. Democrats want open borders. Meanwhile, like you mentioned, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's been getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from these major military contractors. I think they mentioned General Dynamics or General Electric, major like multinational.
Yeah,
military.
General Dynamics was
Yeah.
probably that was the biggest donor, and it seemed like the clearest conflict of interest. People have spoken out about this before. Here, I'll just look at the one quote that says General Dynamics has pitched even more money. It's given bribes to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, $59,000, over $59,000 to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's campaign and PAC since 2006. Company representatives did most of the lobbying on the 2018 Military Construction Appropriations Act. General Dynamics, which made $30 billion in revenue in 2017, builds everything from Abrams tanks, military bases, etc. In fact, Wasserman Schultz has been accused of having, at best, a symbiotic relationship with General Dynamics, and at worst, they describe it as a corrupt alliance. Finally, they said in 2009, Harper's noted that General Dynamics donated about $10,000 to Wasserman Schultz's PAC in April 2008, while opening an office in her district. In Wasserman Schultz's 2010 budget's appropriations request, the Congresswoman then asked the government to hand over $9.7 million to General Dynamics. So what a nice favor for Debbie Wasserman Schultz to return in exchange for these donations to her PAC.
I feel like her district is in the news a lot. I mean, whether you're talking about her connection to her own election rigging, which I feel like Tim Canova is really brave. You know, he's an independent candidate in Florida trying to run against her, really bringing up the massive election fraud that happened in Florida multiple times, and then connecting that to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's rigging of the 2016 elections, the primary that we had in the United States. And mainstream news says that Tim Canova only had like 5% of the vote in Florida, but people said lots of votes were missing, votes were disappearing real time. He's asserting misconduct by former Broward election supervisor Brenda Snipes. And, you know, then when people start to question Debbie Wasserman Schultz on any of this, you know, she says that she's a victim because her own emails calling basically voters idiots in the WikiLeaks, you know, she's the victim because her emails came out and she was exposed as rigging multiple elections at this point.
Because the public just learned what she was actually doing. It's not like it was mischaracterized or they're smearing her. It's her actual emails and that were leaked. It's it's a ridiculous kind of way for her to frame the whole thing. They do break down, and you just kind of touched on some of the specific things that Canova was talking about, but he has it in point form here. Again, I won't go through everything here, but he does summarize everything pretty nicely here. As I'm going on, I'm going to continue. Just a reminder, people watching live, we are live now, obviously. If you'd like to leave a super chat, a question or comment or anything, I'll try to check back and read off all super chats as we continue. We're going to go live for a little while here. Again, a lot of other info with Wasserman Schultz, some other stuff going on. There's been some more talk about the Awan brothers, what had been described as a possible spy ring going on in Congress. Debbie Wasserman Schultz continuing to pay Awan up until his arrest, long after he was already being investigated and actually banned from using the House computers and doing his job as an IT worker for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So why did she keep paying him? He had blackmail against different Congress people. He had so much data, and again, allegations of a spy ring and other things going on. So that's another major scandal. As far as the 2018 midterms, just the key points, Canova runs through them. I do have this. This is again from the petition. There's a picture right here with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Brenda Snipes, who we just mentioned again. She was a key figure in this whole midterm recount, these extended recounts. People thought that Brenda Snipes was trying to rig the midterms after the fact for the Democrats, and there's other strange connections even going back further. People were wondering why she was there in 2018 still to begin with. She'd already had scandals. In one case, lawyers from various Soros-funded groups had to defend Brenda Snipes in one lawsuit about inaccurate voter rosters. So she's the one that was looking at these votes and potentially rigging this election in favor of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Some of the key points Canova goes through: Broward County election officials failed to maintain proper chain of custody of the paper ballots cast in the 2018 election. Florida election officials failed to maintain any proper chain of custody of the electronic voting machines. Broward County election officials failed to maintain digital scanned images of the ballots as directed by the Florida Secretary of State. Another point, the election scanning machines all had wireless digital scanned images and were thereby vulnerable to outside hackers, or they could have used that excuse, as we think that the whole Russian hacking scandal, most of us probably would dispute that entire narrative. Evidence points to it being a leak. That's something that we talked about here for a long time, but did they intentionally have these vulnerabilities where they could rig it and then excuse it as a hack or something like that? They also say no one is permitted to inspect the software that was actually used in the election since the source code is considered proprietary. That's the excuse that they're giving. 2 final points. Moreover, the official 2018 election results, as reported by Brenda Snipes. Again, Brenda Snipes, everything has to be questioned about her, given her past. She did know, we know for sure it was finally decided in early 2018 that in 2016, another race with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Brenda Snipes conveniently illegally destroyed ballots in this race with Debbie Wasserman Schultz from 2016 previously. So there's a history there. Brenda Snipes covering for Debbie Wasserman Schultz and rigged elections. At least it seems that is possible. 2 final points. I'm going to throw back to you, Holly, after this, but they say 2 more things. First, for nearly 98,000 votes recorded for Wasserman Schultz, there was no indication of where, when, and how they were cast. For nearly 98,000 votes for Wasserman Schultz, no indication of where, when, and how they were cast in vote by mail, early voting, election day, or provisional ballots. They have no record. A month after the election was certified, an unverifiable Excel document was finally provided. Florida elections rule, cite one specific rule, saying that they allow hiding of the votes, and the obstacles to obtaining public records requests are the opposite of transparency. And finally, Canova's share of the official vote, Holly pointed out, was only about 5%. I thought on the midterms as well that this it definitely was not what people were expecting. The official vote, the claims of it being 5% for Canova and every demographic group, results so implausible that one highly credentialed expert in statistics and computational science concluded that it was as likely as winning the lottery every day for a year. And Holly, again, expand on this further. But one thing that you had just said was that there's so much going on, so many things that seem to trace back to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's district, and then you have this tie-in with Brenda Snipes, and especially in Florida, there were multiple races that Snipes was involved in, the governor's race and these other races. Debbie Wasserman Schultz likes to rig elections, it looks like. From the 2016 primaries, is she directing Brenda Snipes to further rig these other races in Florida? Does Debbie Wasserman Schultz have some control over that? I don't think it's an outrageous question with everything that we know here, and again, so much more going on with her district.
Yeah, I believe she's serving now her 8th term in Congress. She's in the House of Representatives, so she has a lot of connections in Florida with election rigging and in DC. So you had mentioned the Awan case, and I'm sure most of your viewers know a lot about the Awan case already, but I did wanted to mention some of the connections between what happened with the Awan. So I know a lot of viewers probably already know that the Awan brothers, Imwan, Iran, they were staffers for the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C., and the IT staffer was sentenced to time served back in August. They only charged him in a loan case, but if you remember any of the talk about the smashed Blackberries, or basically it seemed like a blackmail ring that was going on in Congress between the IT and the data. And people might not know, but Debbie Wasserman Schultz's brother, Stephen Wasserman, is the Assistant United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. So he was directly in charge of doing a lot of the investigation in the case. And also, this is really neither here nor there right now, but he was also investigating the Seth Rich murder. So, you can say what you want about that, but when you have your brother doing the investigation for the Awan case and other cases connected, you know, it's when you mention Debbie Wasserman Schultz, it's like, okay, what angle do you want to talk about right now with
Right, she has to
so
do
much news?
even going further back into the WikiLeaks stuff. If you wanted to extend that to Seth Ritt, it's really not hard to draw a line to Debbie Wasserman Schultz on any of those.
Yeah, it's like the 3 degrees of separation of Debbie Wasserman Schultz and some sort of corruption, you know, whether
Mm.
it's in Congress or Florida, you can find her name.
Yeah, for her to describe herself as a victim with her whole with all of this history going on, and again, we regularly talk about the failure of the mainstream media to address this kind of thing, but CNN still having her on as if she's has any credibility at all. CNN just in the last few days having her on as if she's the spokesperson to tell us how we need to stop the funding of the wall. She's going to do everything at her disposal to make sure that we do not secure our own borders. I guess this is the person who is supposed to be funding, sitting on this board for military funding as well. I don't know if there's anything that you want to get into further with the wiki. I mean, really, the headline on the WikiLeaks, her reaction to the Roger Stone, most recent updates with Roger Stone. She talks about WikiLeaks in here. Is there anything more to that? It's outrageous. She's calling herself a victim, of course. She has some more quotes in here. I don't know if there's anything else specifically.
Yeah, well, we were talking a little bit before we got started here and went live, and neither one of us have really covered the Roger Stone indictment at all. You know, there are plenty of people that do, lots of channels that do, but both of us have definitely talked a lot about the WikiLeaks info that came out and the rigging that went on in 2016. And it's kind of a slap in the face. Like when you showed me the article about Wasserman Schultz to lead the military spending committee, it's like it seems like the more criminal people are in DC, the more that they're rewarded. And it really isn't a joke. I mean, there's so many different angles of all the evidence is just really overwhelming between her election rigging multiple times and what's going on in Broward County, what's going on with Tim Canova, her support, the money that she takes in, all of the massive military industrial complex donations that she takes in, her support. I know we won't get too much into it, but of the anti-BDS bill that just passed the Senate, she is a dual Israeli citizen and has very strong ties to the military industrial complex in the Middle East, of course. So big money. And I guess that's just how it goes in DC. I mean, I don't know. I think people should definitely sign this petition and keep on pursuing election fraud that we see, the paper ballots that disappeared, the way that the Democratic Party was able to basically usurp this whole district. So, that's, and to continue to support Tim Canova and going forward with that.
Yeah, definitely. Again, and we do have a link to the actual petition. I don't know how effective these always are, but people, I think that there needs to be some kind of outcry over this. I mean, in my circles again, and it kind of ties into what you were. So it's just there's been so many. It's happened. So many things have happened so often with Wasserman Schultz. It's really unbelievable she has any supporters at this point. I don't know if it's just people that are only. Well, again, CNN will have her on as if she still has some kind of credibility. If you're just watching CNN, even in that case, I mean, the rigging of the primaries, even the mainstream media couldn't cover up those things. Those midterms had to be rigged in some way. Canova definitely underperformed, or what they want us to believe the results were definitely not what I was expecting. And Wasserman Schultz, apparently, according to the official results, ran away with that midterm race. I can't believe that she has any supporters, never mind actually winning by the margins that we're supposed to believe. It's completely unbelievable.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, she's one of the most frustrating ones to continue to cover on this channel, right? Because it's just like,
Yeah.
so, how is it? Yeah. we'll continue to follow these, and hopefully something will come of this call for these most recent calls for this investigation into that race. This is an interesting recap. This was shared, the disappearing Democrat scandal. They're calling it. I won't go through everything. It's a fairly long article, but it's a good recap of most of the things going on with the Awan case. There's some more recent information here, and again, just kind of how it seems like this has been largely covered up for how big of a scandal it is. I do have a link over to Holly's channel, Zoon Politikon. That's also in the video description. I'm gonna go through probably my Patreon links. Is there anything else regarding Debbie Wasserman Schultz? Any other topics or anything?
Well, hopefully, next time we do an update on her or the election, it'll be some good news. I mean, there's so many ways that we've been following her through both of our channels, whether it's the Awan case, the 2006 rigging, the rigging in her own district, her connection to just democratic corruption in general. And maybe we'll see more of her talking about this border wall, the fight that we're seeing, and then also her heading up military spending in Congress. So
it's bizarre that she's still so visible, I guess, is kind of what I'm to boil down that whole point. Is even if they were obviously the connections to some of these Israel lobbies, she's connected to so many members of the establishment in general. As far as those lobbying groups, members of the establishment, yeah, they want her to keep her seat, but the public, I mean, she's just such an unlikable and obviously corrupt person. I can't believe that they're still putting her out on TV. And if she's going to have any role, you would think that they'd be pulling her and telling her you're going to have to be behind the scenes, like they're kind of doing a little bit to the Clintons at this point. I think they're finally realizing that the majority of people realize that the Clintons are corrupt, or at the very least not a good image. I mean, it's not a good look for the Democrats to be dragging out the Clintons. People are sick of them. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I don't know how she's not at that level yet, or how people, it's weird.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll do a follow-up and some of this will come forward. And, anyone just remember to sign the petition and support Tim Canova, and anyone that does any sort of research or help with local elections, because that's really all we have at this point. Just thinking about the elections, and in the United States, things are just so crazy. You literally can buy elections at this point. And that's, like you said, like her popularity is just so low. I mean, that's the only way she really could have made it happen at this point.
Yeah, we do have a link there. It seems like they're actually pretty close to the goal on that petition. So that is in the video description. I have a link to Holly's channel as well. Holly's channel is Zoon Politikon. You can go there, subscribe. You can support this channel over on patreon.com/realityreader. Thanks everybody that supports the channel through there, sharing the info, just commenting. Very much appreciated. But even a couple dollars makes a huge difference over on patreon.com/realityreader. Keep talking about these issues. PayPal link, there's crypto links. And again, the sources, the first one there is the petition, and just some of the other info that we looked at on Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Let me know what you think. I will have Holly back soon, and I'll follow up on this and other related topics as well. Thanks, everybody.